Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beth White, and I am the president of the Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault and Human Trafficking. Could be the longest, come on. You're all good. You're all good. It could be the longest acronym ever for an organization. I'm glad to be here. I am on the Balance of State CoC board and have been a friend of Kristen's for a really long time, which I think is how that ended up happening. Yeah, kind of, because I couldn't say no to her when she called. So thanks for being here today. I just want to quickly say I'm going to acknowledge Linda Wilk, who is one of my excellent Rape Crisis Center directors. I am the umbrella organization of a network of rape crisis centers from around the state, and we have friends from Lafayette as well. So thank you for being here, Erica. I don't like the term rape crisis center. It doesn't feel very trauma informed to say, someone's been raped and they're in crisis, right? That doesn't feel great, but it is a Department of Justice determination. They call them that around the country, so that's what we do. Thanks for coming today. I just want to say thank you for your interest in what I consider to be not the most fascinating topic ever. There's some really interesting things going on down the hall. Maybe you're in the wrong place, but we are going to talk about the structure of the Balance of State CoC board. So that's why we're here. So thank you for your interest.
My name is Myra Wilkie. I'm with Mental Health America of West Central Indiana. Very long acronym again.
Yes.
I've been with the agency for almost 25 years. We started doing housing in the late 1990s. So, yeah.
It's been a while. Been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
I was one of the founding members of the Balance of State board. Got off, spent a couple of years off, came back on, and we've been working really hard because, as we know, homelessness doesn't look the same as it did now in the 90s. And we need to morph and make changes and be ready for when HUD shifts. And that's been, I think, our largest challenge, not only now, but in the past, is when HUD makes those shifts and being ready for that and being on the front end of that and not on the back end. And it's really important that we are always on the front end of it.
Absolutely. Does everyone in the room know what BOS CoC means? Okay, good. I didn't, to be honest. I've been in this job for about 15 months, and before that, I've been a lawyer a long time, but I was not in this world at all. So a Balance of State, of course, means everybody but Marion County, which is where I had worked for many years. So that is confusing. Yeah, so we are going to talk about structure. Some of the things we'll talk about are really HUD requirements, because we all know we live in this world where HUD tells us certain things, and then we do other things, and we try to make all of that make sense. So that is what we're going to talk about. And so there are changes coming, and this is actually very timely because the board met yesterday, and according to our bylaws, changes will be made during a process period that starts with discussion and then ends with comment period, and then we vote again. So at the end of May, yes, we believe we will have a new structure and new committees in place for them, assuming that the board agrees with us.
June 15th is the magic date for everything to
yes.
be
There
approved.
it is. All right. So we've already done this. Yep. So let's, yeah. There we go. Myra, I'm going to let you handle this.
So this is the current Balance of State CoC Board of Directors. The Executive Committee, as you know, consists of Pam Isaac, Jennifer Layton, Jared Wilson, and Emily Pike. And then the directors are from various organizations, because we have to be very have a lot of representation around the different people we serve. So there's people from Veteran Affairs, Housing Authority, homelessness, real estate companies, the gamut.
They also have to be geographically representative, so we have representatives from all parts of the state.
And that's go back a slide. I just wanted to see one thing.
I will try.
Okay.
And it's been very fun for me to meet a bunch of people around the state. It's been really, really fun. So we are geographically representative as well.
Along with funded agencies and non-funded agencies. So try to find a really good balance with that, because that's important.
So I put up some definitions just because it helped me understand sort of what, the lay of the land, right? So we've already talked about what is the BOS CoC, and then the board of directors, and kind of what is the responsibility of the board of directors. So this language comes directly from the charter documents, and again, as we were just talking about, diverse, geographically different stakeholders, knowledge and expertise, funding decisions. And so the board really is, a volunteer group. Mission is to serve all of you. So when I first started, I said to Christian, what is the CoC? Who are they? Do they have names? Do they pay dues? Do they gather in a group? Like, how does any of that work? And, your answer to me was it's everybody working in this environment. Right? So it's all of you. So the board serves you. We are here to make policy and to dig into some specific issues. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And our role is to be your voice and your supporters, right? So the list of people that, these slides are going to be available, of course, later, but you should know who they are in your area and you should call on them to represent you, because that's what we're here to do. You are the Balanced State CoC and we are your board. Have any questions about that?
Are there staff connected to this?
Yes, there are. And I think actually the next slide talks about how that works. I think so. Yes. How about that? That was very, we didn't plan this, but the collaborative applicant is the term that HUD uses for the entity that actually, to be honest, does all the work, right? Because that's just true, right? So Kristen and her team, and you met her team at lunchtime. There are different divisions of that team. In a minute, I'm going to show a graphic of that. But the collaborative applicant is IHCDA. And they are essentially the staff of us, I guess, and all of you, right? They're the ones, who day in and day out do the work. Because everyone on the CoC board, I think without exception, has a day job of some sort. I don't think there are any retired people. We are all people who represent other constituencies and other spheres of influence and expertise. And so because that's true, obviously I'm not writing grants and I'm not interacting with HUD every day. Now, I think Myra may be doing that on behalf of the agency she runs, but not on behalf of the CoC. So I thought that, I hope, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Great, wonderful. Okay, and then how do we do that? Well, these are the things specifically that we do. And we are working on, we had a strategic planning process, which was, I think, really useful. And then we have a new committee structure and new organizational structure because we want to be more effective. And as Myra said, we want to be on the cutting edge and not the leading edge. We want to be kind of ahead of the curve because we believe that changes are coming from the federal level and we want to be ready. Because we don't want to have them come in and tell us what we ought to be doing. We want to be doing it already. So yeah, I think that's, are there questions about any of that? Okay. All right, Myra, I'm going to let you do this too.
Okay.
I'm going to make you do all the points. I'm great like that.
I think the great thing about the strategic plan was that we came out for the first time with some really good strategic goals. And that's not always been the case. And so, these are exactly where we need to be. So increased affordable housing opportunities for people experiencing homelessness. Yes, we've been doing that all along, but we need to be more intentional about how we do that. So we're going to develop a comprehensive and sustainable strategy to secure, maintain, and retain landlords willing to support people experiencing homeless across from Indiana. And I think you heard a little bit about the committee structure this morning when Pam talked about the landlord mitigation committee, and so that committee will be tasked with how to develop that and be able to sustain it. Because we all need to work with landlords because there's just not enough of what the resources are scarce and there's just not enough of them. So we need to bring in landlords. Objective 1.2 is to create a plan to increase resources for affordable housing development and access to rental assistance resources for households experiencing homelessness. We've been in an affordable housing crisis for years, just not after the pandemic. This has been coming for years, for decades. I think the great thing about the pandemic was that it opened the eyes of our local leadership to really understand that without affordable housing, people have to be able to work, play, and live in their communities. And they can't do that without affordable housing. Advocate for resources to support the homeless response system. So we're going to develop an advocacy agenda focused on securing additional funding to address issues related to homelessness. Create a more equitable homeless response system to support and elevate
Easy for you to say.
minoritized people.
There we go.
We're going to develop action-oriented plan to address the systemic and institutional inequities for people experiencing homelessness, build relationships with key stakeholders, and the DEI space. And I think one thing that came out of our strategic planning initiative was that we need to be really intentional about DEI. And we've had a lot of conversations about how we're going to just not wrap that from up at the board, but how that's going to be disseminated down through the regions. So we're very intentional. We had very intentional conversations and how we're going to do that.
We did. And can I ask, I know y'all represent lots of different organizations. Are you having success addressing issues of DEI at the local level? And if you are, I want to hear about it right now. Right now, I'm putting you on the spot. Because to be honest, this is really hard. This is really hard. Right? I mean, we've talked about it at my agency, how we can make sure that we are equitable in the way we are serving people, that we are meeting them where they are, that we are addressing institutional barriers and inequities, right? And it's like I would tell my husband, we're ending sexual assault, so I'm going to go today and get that figured out, and then tomorrow I don't know what we're going to do, right? Figuring out institutional racism, like it's not a thing that we're all going to fix today, tomorrow, next week, 1 quarter, 2 quarters. That's not how that's going to work. It's a constant thing, but it is really hard to know how you move that needle. It's just really hard. And I don't have the answers, and I don't think our board has the answers, but we would love to hear from, not necessarily right now, but from some of you about some things that you might be doing that are moving the needle to make sure you are serving everyone in an equitable way. So you can give that some thoughts.
We try to do that with our board. We try to make sure we have different, not even just different ethnicities, but also including those with developmental delays, because I feel like that's a massive underrepresented population when we do the DEI trainings and the DEI implementation. It's like we're missing out this gigantic developmentally delayed piece of that, and meeting them where they're at and their needs. Because a lot of our programs, I don't think, fit their needs or advocates enough for their needs if they have a need for more supports. So we try to include that in our boards, so that way, and people with lived experience. So we try to include that and make our board as well-rounded as possible.
Please tell me where you are.
I'm with the Homeless Coalition of Southern Indiana.
Southern Indiana. Okay, and where's your home base?
We border Kentucky, so Louisville, right across from
Sure.
Louisville.
So Jefferson, Clarksville, Jeffersonville. Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. All really great thoughts. Anybody else?
I would just really say that, like, there are YWCAs, and 6 of us in Indiana, so our missions are to eliminate racism and empowerment. So
Yes.
we all have DD programs or homeless programs, but that eliminate racism is the forefront, because we can't empower if we don't do this other work.
Right.
So most of the YWs have like really core structured things that I know they're a part of our balance of state that's
Yes.
health. And so for us locally, we're in Muncie, so ours is
Yeah.
down the street or one of the streets, but.
We're in your hometown today.
Yeah, so our board, I mean, it's very of course, diverse. YWCA, it's a USA thing. So they say you have to have this type of person on the board, age range, these races, like all that's there. But like even right now, our board is going through collectively like an anti-racism training manual. Like you can serve and you have all your skill sets, but we need you to be able to do this talk in community as well. So just saying all that to say YWCA,
Yes.
who are in our balance of state, have tools. They've been doing this racial justice work before it became a tag.
It became a thing we're all
yeah,
talking
so
about, right?
There you go. So that's something that But I'm on this board too, so you
I
have
know
me,
you
so
are,
we'll be able to.
so I'm gonna be just picking,
show and
I'm
stuff.
picking your brain until yeah, thank you for that. We just, in April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we cut the ribbon on 2 new rape crisis centers, 3 new rape crisis centers, one of which is the YWCA in Greater Lafayette. Yay. We are working on the YWCA in Fort Wayne to become a rape crisis center, so strong strong partnerships with that
Because of
organization.
Jeffersonville, if we need to make another one.
I know, right?
You can come on down if you want to, that would be perfect. We'd love to have you.
Love it.
The YWCA in South Bend.
Oh, there you go, South Bend. Yes, the Family Justice Center is our rape crisis center in.
That's too bad.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, I thought they were good, but I don't know, like, maybe we're gonna really just break it down right here and find out.
They're less than honest.
Oh, boy. So what else about this? I just can't talk enough about DEI.
Yeah, we need to strengthen our internal operations to ensure that the organizations and the people are supported within the homeless response system. And we're going to do that through providing intentional guidance, training, and technical assistance throughout Indiana, the Balance of State 502, by interacting with and supporting the regional planning councils. So what we know is that people turn over quickly, and there is a lack of education and training around all the things that we need to have happen at the balance of state level. And when people don't, they just only know what they know. And so if they don't know, then it impacts us as an entity and not just like one agency. We all are impacted by that. We need to right size and refine programs across the housing spectrum for people experiencing homelessness. Define a statewide crisis response plan, inclusive of emergency shelter, temporary housing, prevention and diversion, with emphasis on equitable resources distribution across regions. And I think, we've talked about this, that, we're a continuum of care. And if we don't have the continuum, we can't provide the care for people. So
Absolutely.
it's important that the continuum be robust, and that it's not, we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
So let me ask, do all of you think that resources are distributed equitably among the regions of Indiana? Okay, my Southern Indiana rep says no.
Well, yeah, I feel like a lot of them are geared towards these larger cities and
I would
more north. We're kind of like in a vacuum now. I've been working very strong to pull them down south
Okay.
and out of these cities, but it's like pulling teeth to get that to happen. And I understand that there is a heavier need necessarily in those cities, but it's a different need than what we have in our rural counties. So that's what the equity,
Yeah.
that's where that comes into, is it might not need to be so heavy here, but we still need something to help with the rural counties.
I think that rural is the key word there, because I'm in a rural county, but I'm also in Myra's region. But I
It's
don't-
our region, Leah.
I know.
We're all on the same
Yeah,
team.
you're
We are.
in the CE league, so I'll give that to you. So, but I think that it is a little more uneven, because I'm outside of the majority of the spaces that get the resources. So it's harder for me to obtain resources as well. But I think it's more rural. I don't think it's necessarily urban, suburban, or whatever. I just think that it's a little uneven based on the needs, because I still have needs. They're different.
Sure, please.
So I've been looking at the statewide system and kind of reviewing all of the continuum cares and looking at who you have with your CAP agencies, public housing agencies. I've also taken all of the permanent supportive housing that's been done. I've got a great website out with a great list, and I've kind of mapped that across. And where the majority of the projects have gone, there's capacity, where there is organizations who know how to do housing development and who know how to garner the resources. And those communities that don't have the leadership, don't have sometimes the political will, those areas have nothing. Some cities, larger cities, you might think, don't even have housing shelters, never mind permanent supportive housing. So And capacity building around the state
Yeah.
is necessary.
And I will agree, because we're not right-sized even for emergency shelter beds,
Right.
when you look at it. So, it has been, unfortunately, when you do project development, like housing, you have to have local buy-in and you have to have political will. Without those two things, you can't do it. And so maybe IEC can look at like providing information on how you, tools you need in your box to help you do that.
And I would say that some areas have been really good about, bringing in capacity. There have been some areas that have just gone out and gotten that private developer or a developer from some other part of the state to say, come and help us do this.
Right.
So who in the room has been successful? And tell us your secret. What's the secret sauce? Anybody?
Well, I work mostly with the Corporation for Supportive Housing and the Institute.
Yeah.
And if you can, I think they probably prioritize places that don't have any housing, but you'll have to snag a private developer or find someone to. And you could call up IHCDA and tell them, you need supportive housing in X town, and they'll probably tell you people that you can call. And then you've got to kind of rope the city council and the mayor into it, which is work, but that may or may not be possible, but
That's the political will piece, right?
yeah.
Anybody in the room with good political connections? That, and I'm looking at you, Linda, because you get along with everybody. You knew I was gonna say
I
it.
knew that was coming.
I'm calling you out in a good way. Come on now. Tell me, it's been a lot of years, but tell me what you do.
What do you mean?
Like, you get along great with everybody
Oh.
in your community.
It just comes down to relationships. I mean, honestly, is what it comes down to. And they have to trust you and they have to believe that what you say is really what you're gonna do. I mean, if you drop the ball, they're not gonna have another opportunity. And it has to be a priority for them. I mean, you've got to sell yourself, but then you have to realize it may not be the right time. There may be other priorities that are pressing more than what yours is, and you may have to work with them and wait until it becomes your time,
So I would say, get to know your city council,
Yes,
for sure.
get to know your county council, get to know your commissioners,
yes,
attend those meetings.
yes.
It's important.
Yeah.
Get their ear.
Invite them to your facilities.
Yep.
Invite them to your board meetings, invite them to celebrations, ribbon cuttings, all the rest of it. Help them understand the need and the capacity and the lack of capacity, because that's what we're talking about. What else?
Join
Please.
your local League of Women Voters
There you go.
chapter and they get invited you get invited to all those things that she just mentioned.
Go out to organizations, right?
Sometimes it
I
just
couldn't-
takes a really long time,
Yeah, it does.
like a year or some, like, I tried to set up a meeting with IHCDA and our mayor, and he showed up, but he just didn't act very interested. And like 2 years later, he's finally implementing the things they talked about. But,
Does he have staff?
well, of course,
Well,
but
get in front
they,
of his staff.
yeah.
Sometimes they can help, push from the other side. What we do.
I was curious about the township trustee presentation. I didn't get to go, but I went and found that guy. And
Jason.
Yes, and I asked him, so it had been in the past that township trustees could pay shelter per diem. They don't do that anymore. So I said, so do township trustees have bonding authority? And he said, yes.
Careful what you wish for.
True, but technically, he said we could build a shelter. We may not want to run it, but we can build it.
That's curious
Yes.
and interesting. isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think each township trustee
has a
They're
different
all
philosophy.
and
Right.
interpret what they're supposed to
But
do.
you might find that somebody.
Sympathetic ear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, you want to expose them to the work that you're doing. All right, I guess we have slides. We can move on. Kristen, Kristen's sitting over there like, stop asking people questions. Okay, who is our timekeeper? How are we doing? Great. Okay. Okay.
Libraries have bonding authority to build.
So I'll be happy to take this. We're talking now about committees, right? So if you've been on board, you've been, at your faith institution or, your school, PTA or whatever, boards can work well as groups, but usually the committees is where the rubber meets the road, right? The committees are where the actual work gets done because they can be topic specific and initiative specific, development, events, that sort of thing. So we're really trying to create a committee structure and let the board as a whole be really more policy guidance and oversight. So really what we hope is that the committees will do the bulk of the work and the board itself will hold those committees accountable, whether they're doing the work that they need to be doing or not. So that is really the goal. We're going to talk about what, HUD requires us to do, right? Because we obviously know we don't live in a vacuum. And then we're going to talk about what these, committees, we've tried to do standing committees and then sort of ad hoc committees, which are things that, the work they do will sunset, right? A lot of the work that we do is, forever. Engaging landlords, forever, right? You have to know, that's just a thing. But we want to talk about the differences there. And then, of course, the executive committee and what they're going to do. So let's go on. Yeah. So this is a federal requirement, right? This is just straight out of the federal regs. And what it is we're supposed to be doing. So I'm not going to read this to you. Of course, HMIS, a big piece of it. And of course, the other thing to pick out, those are very specific deliverables that HUD expects from us. And not just us, but every CoC in the whole country. And then other things, ESG, other things. And then evaluate the needs, right? That's 3 simple words.
Yep, and this hasn't changed.
Right.
This has been like this for a long time.
Right.
So
It's there, it's still there. We are just talking about
how we're going to do it is
address
what's
it.
changing.
Right. That's correct. And then here's more, and then operate the CoC, right? And so I think that, the good news is we have a collaborative applicant, IHCA, who's really good at their jobs, and they do these things and hold us accountable to make sure we are assisting. So can I turn on this, Linda, can you see the slides? I'm like, side-eyeing over here. Okay, you can.
Yeah, right.
I want you to see the genius that is on the slides. So important. So we tried to break down the requirements instead of just a list, sort of into categories, I guess. And then operations being one category, managing policies, recommendations, and making sure that they're being met. And then, planning, implementation of all the acronyms that I didn't understand what they were. What does CE mean? What is ESG? What's VAWA? What's all that? So yeah, implement and manage the systems that make these things happen. And so we have some committee types, and you can see that we've talked already about standing committees, standing subcommittees, ad hoc committees that are specific and time limited, right? So hopefully they don't exist forever, but they are, pulled together for a specific purpose. And then staff-led initiatives that we're going to delegate to IHCA. Because as I said before, they're really the ones who do the work. And then collaborations, of course. What we know about this environment is there are lots of communities of interest. And they're not exclusive, like for instance, veterans, right? There's a lot of what we call intersectionality, right? Like we have veterans who are also LGBTQ, who also live in rural areas, who are also potentially developmentally delayed, who are also, I don't know what, right? Like there's the list. And so to the notion that the veterans services folks would get together and say, we're going to focus on veterans. Yes, except those needs are broader, right? And so they have to collaborate across and have to have, good relationships, with everyone. But we also know that veterans have some not exactly unique, but special needs. And there are also other resources, right? There are federal resources, state resources. And we do have a veteran services representative on our board, Joe, whose last name I have just forgotten. DeVideo. So that's really helpful. Are there any questions about any of this? We're going to show you a graphic in just a minute, all color coded, kind of fun. Somebody a lot younger than me put that together because I don't know how to do it. Other questions? Ooh, that's an introductory slide. That I got figure out. Next one. There we go. That is the proposed structure. It is color coded based on the categories that we were just talking about. The type is very small. I know.
Don't let young people do these things.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
It's like you want to go up there and be like, make it bigger, but you can't make it bigger. That's not how that works. But we are, of course, gonna provide all these slides to you all later, so you can make it bigger with your fingers. So, because that's obviously gonna be helpful to read it. So, Myra, do you wanna
Sure.
talk about each of the categories?
So from the board of directors will come the DEI work. We felt like that needed to be intentional and not a committee. That would be siloed. That will be in all of our work. The executive committee will do the charter review, and landlord engagement will be responsible for reporting to the executive committee. And then you have the standing committees are the funding and resources committee, the performance and outcome committee. Those two have not changed. We're going to have a service provision committee and a community engagement committee. Those are new committees.
Yes.
The youth advisory board,
The YAB.
yeah, the YAB.
I didn't know what that was.
They're a subcommittee of the funding and resources committee.
Yes.
HMIS is a subcommittee of performance and outcomes because it's its own animal. And Development Day is also attached to performance and outcomes as a subcommittee. Because this to do one of these days takes a whole work with a whole lot of people. Regional chairs will be a subcommittee under service provision as well as the CE leads. Denise Green, it's like Beth said, you know, these targeted groups intersect. And we had a lot of discussion around this. If you talk about families, you talk about youth. You talk about youth, you talk about LGBTQIA+. Talk about veterans, you talk about, you know, you talk about veterans, you might talk about so it's all intermingled. And so it's important that they come together and they're not siloed.
Yes. Are there questions about any of this?
But do you have any mental health providers or DMH involvement in any of this, or are they on their own track?
Myra, this is your wheelhouse.
Yep. So I think the service provision, there'll be some people there. There's people on the board that have the, you know, the mental health piece. Hopefully that is just like DEI, that we're working that in all the discussions that we're having, because it's so prevalent among youth, among families, among veterans, you know, DV, you know, LGBTQIA. So, to answer your question, no, there's not like one committee that's gonna address behavioral health. It should be addressed through all committees.
Please, question?
Seniors.
Yeah, I think that we would say seniors fall within the families kind of category. I mean, they could be separate.
Yeah.
So under
Yes.
community engagement, those are the 6 that we talked about, but there can be more
Yes.
interest groups,
Yeah.
including mental health and seniors. So that's an area that we can, if there's an interest to have an interest group, that's where they would fall.
Interest for industry. One of the, you know, think one of the good, and I'm a lawyer, so I geek out about this stuff, but we can add interest groups without amending the bylaws. So it's easy to do, right? And it can, you know, come and go sort of as the need or as the interest arises. With the standing committees, they have to be in the bylaws. There has to be a whole process to do that. So we're more flexible as it relates to the interest groups. Other questions? Somebody, I think, had a question. No. All right, well, we are going to provide this to you, and you know, I just want to, please.
Is this your conclusion?
I think on this, I was just going to say that there's no perfect way to do this. Like, this was not the only kind of schematic we came up with. And we talked a long time about sort of where should the YAB go? Should the YAB go with the, you know, the families section or the youth, right? They're youth, that's what YAB stands for. But they have a funding stream that is very specific. We have hired a whole group of people, to Jean and her team, right, under the YAB. I'm sorry, you're Jean. No, you're not Jean.
I'm one of Jean's people.
Ah, we're Jean's people, right here in our room, right there. Yeah, it's just, you don't look like Jean. But, so we put them under funding resources, nothing magical about it. It could be the wrong thing to do, and we may have to go back and fix it. Please.
Yes, so I was recently brought on by Indiana Department of Health to look at all health issues through a housing lens. So I'm attempting to get folks to think about how housing is foundational to health. And there's just a lot out there, including the recent release from the Interagency on Homelessness from the federal government that is all about health is housing. And so there's just a big push right now about how to get the federally funded community health centers engaged.
In the mix.
Yeah. And so I can tell you that the Department of Health, we will be meeting regularly this coming year with our network of community health centers to talk about what are you going to do with housing?
Yeah.
Which, of course, they're going to say, are you kidding me? I'm trying to manage diabetes, right?
Right.
But they are screaming bloody murder right now about people being released from the hospital after experiencing a stroke or a major health
place to
event
go.
with no place to go. And so how do we start to integrate or encourage our medical compatriots to start becoming part of this system, to advocate a part of this system? They might bring some extra federal funding. How do we make that happen? And then also, how might that impact our policy preferences for which projects get funded? Because we have done a lot in the mental health, substance abuse, but there may be other kinds of housing that needs to be developed for just old and sick, or one of the former speakers who is a CE said, we've got people coming in who diagnosed with cancer but cannot start treatment until there is, or not just that this is a current address, that there is safe, decent housing for them to,
Recuperate.
exactly,
Chemotherapy.
exactly.
So I
So
get that.
how do we start thinking about expanding some of our homeless resources to think beyond just the substance abuse, mental health? We know why we did it that way, because they're the highest cost, no judgment there, highest cost, we can get them housed, that's the most effective thing, but there's gonna be a lot more people, I think. And I just watched one where, our homeless system, people in our homeless system who've been there forever are getting older. What is going to be our response?
Yeah.
So
Tell me where you work.
I'm with the Indiana Department of Health.
Oh, great. Yeah, wonderful.
So one thing we've seen as a trend is that as our tenants get older in supportive housing, there's nowhere for them, they have to age in place.
Right.
And it's not the most appropriate place
Exactly,
because we are not equipped to handle their healthcare needs
exactly.
and we have nowhere to send them. So what we're trying to do is work with our CAF agency. We're having
The
those,
area aging.
I was gonna say, the area of aging.
they're not doing a whole lot. I'm really disappointed
So they
in,
need- so how do we bring them
Yeah.
to the,
but I think community conversations need to be had for that because it might be a state problem, but it's certainly a community issue.
So my colleague in Southern Indiana was saying that you have a good relationship with your agency on aging?
I'm sorry?
No, so you have a good relationship with your
Yeah, we
agency?
work with ours pretty regularly. They come do trainings on us and we come do trainings with them. But they help us with our waivers. They help us with in-home care. So if they work like in our rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, we help them to get resources to help them offset those additional needs. But yeah, they'll come to in person to do waivers. for
But if they
them.
have a mental health diagnosis, they can't go to nursing home. Nursing homes are declining them. If they've had an inpatient stay, they can't go to a nursing home. So it doesn't matter how sick they are. We have somebody that's terminal. He has a mental health diagnosis and there's no nursing home within the region that will take him.
exactly.
It's
So,
hardest to house.
Yep.
Lord.
Yeah.
Well, that's terrible.
so we're figuring it out as an agency.
I guess I just say that, as we look at who serves on the continuum care locally or at the state level, that we might think about new partners. So community health clinic, right, your area aging in place, all of those might be new partners.
Yeah.
And that's what they're kind of promoting nationally.
I think the mental health model doesn't work so well with shelters because some of the homeless people are not very good clients, like they don't like to sit around and wait for appointments, and they might not show up. So you have to have a whole different model to get them services. You know, you might have to go to where they are. And then the mental health people are short on time, and they don't take reservations, you know, so how can you get a mental health model that is adopted to homeless people? And so if you could put them somewhere in your matrix here,
I've
like you
moved on
said,
for
put
time
them
purposes. We're almost out of time.
on the continuum or whatever you have to do, but
Okay.
they live in a different world.
Okay, I appreciate that.
For mental health, is we have a mobile unit now. We work with one of the hospitals, so we have a mobile nurse practitioners that will come out, for like injections, and management. And we also have a licensed clinical social worker who will come and do like emergency
And
sessions.
who pays for that?
I'm the hospital, they work with them.
The hospital pays for that.
Yeah, they pay
Yeah,
theirs.
hospitals are another one.
I love that.
I was like,
Yeah.
also, some of the funds,
think?
if it's like an emergency mental health, like for street outreach covers emergency mental health. If you have like a contract with them to do contract work.
Okay, well, all really good and helpful discussion, lots of challenges. So, let's go to our, this is just a, I mean, we're not gonna really go through this except to say, this is a graphic that is Kristen's universe, her great empire. She is the queen of this empire, she sits at the top, she's a benevolent dictator, but all these people, I think, I'm not sure, I mean, maybe. It's been my experience, I don't know. So,
Tell them to do that.
CoC, grants management, HMIS, of course, which is the world that Grant, he thinks he's up here, but he's not. Jean, you can tell him I said that too. Jean and her people, so there they are. And then Abby, who does the what is that? I don't even know what that means. HHID, what does that mean?
Homeless health, infectious disease.
There we go.
That's the new group, right?
Yeah, it's the new group.
Yeah, that's your money, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's the Department of Health
Gratefully
and,
receive your money, appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is just, I mean, you can have this, it's actually got names on it, so that's helpful. Who's doing what? Yeah, and here is some description of what these people that we just saw on the org chart, what they're doing, what they're, you know, what they are doing, because Kristen's requiring them to do it, what they're supposed to be doing. I'm not gonna read it to you. So what is our next step? So we gotta put all this in place with the revising of the bylaws, and that takes some time, and by the middle of the 15th of June, we will have that approved and done. And then we're gonna select some chairs, although as of yesterday, I think we have chairs for all
We
the
have to
committees.
confirm them.
We have to confirm the
Yeah.
chairs. Right. So leadership is important, and then we're gonna have some organizational meetings with these committees, and we're gonna revise a bunch of legal documents that have to be revised, and that's probably gonna be on my plate, and it will make my head hurt, but I will do it because that's what I do. And then we will work on the governance charter, which is a thing that requires us to have. Also a boring document. But these are all the things that we've got on our plate to do. I thought all the hard work was done, but
No.
it's really not, is it, Kristen? It's really
I
not.
have a real quick question.
Please.
We're coming up on ESG application period time.
Yes.
Since you're gonna be revising all of the MOAs, and are you gonna be revising the MOUs that we have to do as chairs as well?
no, this is
Okay.
for just the committee structure
Okay.
and the board structure.
Okay.
Yes. It will not impact community. I mean, except to say that there'll be new people, so they leadership that are serving you. That's what we're going to do, is serve all of you. So I think that should be our last slide. There we go. Yeah. So what questions or comments do you have? I love that we've had good discussion, and I want to.
In the last 18 months or so, I feel like we've gotten a lot more support from IHCDA. There's been better training. They're more responsive. I don't know what happened or why that changed, but I'm pleased to say it has.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's been a big boost in the right direction.
How long have you been at it?
6 years
Okay.
in this capacity.
And where are you?
I'm with the YWCA in Elkhart and South Bend.
Wonderful. Straight north.
Yep.
Yep, good. Wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, one of your township trustees was just here, Jason Christian.
Mhm.
He was an old friend of mine. He's a really good guy.
Cool.
Yeah, build a shelter. Tell Jason I said so. You don't know Jason. Tell
I just met
Jason.
him.
He's a great guy, he really is.
He is
I
a
can
great
tell.
guy.
Yeah,
Really
some of the
smart.
trustees, I mean, there are a lot of them, and they're not all great, I'll just say that out loud. Some of them are. Other comments or, thank you for your positive comments. What other questions or comments? Anything else? All right, well, I did want to make a comment with my new friend from the Board of Health. Thank you for what you're doing. Some of you may have paid attention to the legislative session, or you could have like gouged your eyes out every day and had more fun. But we did have a legislative session and it is now over. And one of the things that they did was pour some additional resources into our local health departments. But just like the legislature, what they give, they also, put strings and they take away. And one of the strings, that there are a number of specific things that the health departments have to do in order to get the money. But they're already doing those things, so it shouldn't be that big a deal. All that is to say, it's a really good time to go to your local health departments and say, hey, I hear that you've gotten some new resources and isn't that great? And we'd like to be a partner with you on issues of housing is health. And how can we work together? Because they are in this process of receiving and then kind of figuring out how to spend these new resources. Now, some of them, they don't decide, like they have to do specific they have to beef up enforcement, for instance, of code violations and stuff like that.
That wasn't on the list.
It wasn't on the list?
No, it's part of their duties, but it wasn't on the list.
All right, well, my fault.
That's okay.
I was
I
in
love
the-
your thinking.
I was in the hallway when I was listening to the testimony and I thought I heard someone.
It's important that you talk to your county commissioners because
Yes.
they have to sign off on it. If they don't sign off on it, then your money goes back, gets
Right.
returned. So talk to those,
You don't
local
want your money to
people.
go back.
No, you
No.
know,
So you can go towards housing initiatives.
Well,
homeless
Well-
issues and.
yes, so.
what does our health department expert say?
Yeah, so I looked at the 20 issues. Number one, the state law always said that local health departments should have been delivering on these services anyway. But what happened with the pandemic is they realized that the health departments were woefully understaffed and under-resourced.
Yes.
So this money was just to go to all local health departments. And there were some commissioners who said, well, what if we don't want it? So in the negotiation
That has to be
process.
my.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. that's
Don't
my-
pay attention to our politicians from St. Joe.
Yeah,
We
please.
apologize.
Yeah, we do.
Exactly. So then it was like, okay,
Okay.
you don't have to take it if you don't want it. And if you want it, you gotta come and apply for it. And just promise that you'll deliver on these 20 health goals, which you were supposed to deliver anyway.
And where does one find a list of these screen goals? Are they on your
So
website?
good. No. But I'll send them to you. and
You could probably
figure out.
Google, state health
Well, it's
department
probably-
funding.
What I will
legislation.
say, what I will say is that thankfully, a legislator at the hour came in and said, wait a second, local health departments ought to be working on chronic health issues like diabetes, heart disease. So that got added. What's not on the list, to my dismay, was the enforcement of housing affordability standards.
Yeah.
Yep.
But technically, they're supposed to be doing that. So, but I would also say, and it's confusing, that these healthcare centers, a few local housing authorities run, or health authorities run public healthcare centers, but not many. So these public healthcare centers are funded with federal dollars, but they may know their local health department and they may not. But these, yeah, it's, yeah, we're just,
Pardon my language.
okay, so I learned all the housing and now I'm learning all the public housing, right? But these healthcare clinics are free to anyone. They're gonna try to get you on HIP or, but they have to serve everyone. And they really are, medical resources. And they are, they're supposed to be asking about what is your housing situation. Frankly, they don't want to ask because when they hear that you're homeless, they feel like they don't know what to do. So part of it is trying to educate them about what housing resources there are. You don't have to learn this wheel from scratch. I'm hoping to bring to them this year where the housing resources are. You don't have to become an expert, you just need to go out and partner.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way street that we're trying to work on here.
And how are they distributing the funding? Is it just like formulaic or? is
Yes,
it-
partly.
So
The public, the local housing, the local health departments. Yeah, it's formal.
So it's not equal, it's equitable. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Mary and I don't get more than, sorry.
Right.
Podcast.
Sullivan.
So, sorry. So, I was Mary County, sorry.
If our commissioners say no, can other
Can you,
departments?
can you go around them and
You
say,
need to
we
go
hate you?
advocate. You need to get in front of them and say, take this money.
You have a political remedy.
Yeah.
I think the councils can, but they have to have a supermajority to overrule the commissioners. I think it depends on, it also probably depends on county.
Well, let's just talk to them about the need. And I think they'll do the right thing. How about that? I think we have time.
We are out of
Kristen
time.
wants me to stop talking.
You have
We have about 6 minutes. Anything else anybody wants to say or add? Really, thanks for coming. Like, I thought this stuff was boring, but it's not as boring as I thought it was, because it's important, and we've learned a lot from all of you, and I appreciate it, and we're here to serve you. Most important thing I started saying, I'm gonna say it again, we are here to serve you. Your board is here to be your voice and to assist you, so please, be in touch with us. Yes?
When you send us the PowerPoints, would you be able to add the contact information? So if I wanted to contact my CoC board member on there, I can do that?
We have a, yes?
So, well, the list of the board members is on the website,
Website.
and then we have a general mailbox that you could send, and then we can distribute it.
What if I specifically wanted to ask Emily a question?
Then you can reach out to us, and we can get that to you.
I think people are uncomfortable with contact information on the website. I'm not, you can contact me, Beth, I can't
Well,
see you.
the bad thing about contact information on the webpage is that those notorious hackers
Oh,
that want to hold your information for ransomware, that's how they get it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So,
Computers.
I need Myra, I
So-
have like 5 different people I can go through.
yeah.
You'll find her.
I know.
Yeah, my token over in president director's like, yeah, I see him at the club every Friday night.
Yeah.
And after a few drinks, I get what I want from him, so there we go. All right, we are adjourned. It's been a lot of fun. and I appreciate all of you.
Thanks, guys.